Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is August the 4th, 2017. This is home of original cryptocurrency news. I am really proud to have the best guests in the space on this very show that comes on every Friday. And today we have some awesome guests from all around the world. We have Ansel Lindner. We have Lorien Gamaroff in South Africa. And we have Samson Mow, who's coming this week from Vancouver, I think. But you
Victoria.
Victoria, British Columbia. So we can find you in Asia sometimes too. So Samson has never been on the show before, and it is just a privilege and an honor. Everyone knows who this dude is. If you know about cryptocurrency, if you know about Bitcoin, you see him on Twitter, you know about Core, Blockstream, all that stuff. So give yourself I can't give you a proper introduction. So tell us what you do, how you describe yourself, and what's going on.
So I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Blockstream. I'm in charge of product as well. We're building out Liquid. And in my spare time, I also make hats and talk about Bitcoin.
Oh, dude. And what hats do you make some glorious news out there. And I want to talk about segregated witness because you're an expert in such matters. And this month we're going to experience new levels, new accomplishments, getting us closer to segregated witness. So give us the timeline for this month in terms of segregated witness, because this is huge. This is the news we should be focusing on, I think. So take it away with a segregated witness rant of some sort.
Well, segregated witness is mainly a bug fix that we've been fighting over for probably a year and a half now. It enables a lot of interesting things like smart contracts, Lightning Network, and it helps Bitcoin scale. It gives us bigger blocks up to a maximum size of 4 megabytes under certain conditions. And it looks like it's going to activate. BIP 148 helped to push things along. It got BIP 91 going. All the miners were signaling. And it looks like it's going to lock in on August 8th and activate on August 8th. And after a 2-week period, then we should have it live on the network.
Well, this August 8th date is something that people should get really excited about. Now, after that, are there any other dates because people love to obsess over dates in this space? Is there any other date that you know of specifically relating to Segwit that's big?
I think it's August 8th is lock-in, and then August 21st is the activation.
Okay, so we are really close to August 8th. We're really close to August 21st, and we don't hear people talking about it yet because people have been distracted by something else. But we're going to talk about the distraction in a second. When it's the beginning of September, when all of this actually comes through, do you think there is going to be a focus on this? And what do you have any price thoughts around these events?
I think with Segwit active, we should see a large bull run. With the Litecoin, we saw the same thing. The price is going, multiples up, and Bitcoin is not going to move as quickly. But I think it's possible to see 6,000 before the end of the year, maybe.
Wow! I wasn't expecting you to even give a number. That's pretty cool, man. Pound that like button if you like when Adam gets shocked like that. And live viewers, thanks for being here today. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's go to Ansel real quick. Samson just said a lot. What do you think about Segwit and what's about to happen with it in this month?
It's the start of a new era, right? Like it's going to enable so many new things, new layer 2 applications, obviously Lightning Network, but now we can get down to business. And well, Blockstream and all the core developers all over the world can get down to business, making these new things, new products for us on Bitcoin. I'm really excited to see side chains like Drive Chain, RSK, that kind of stuff. I'm also really excited for Tumblebit. That's coming shortly. That's an anonymous thing. I think they're in beta or something like that. Mimblewimble too. There's all these different things that are coming to Bitcoin, and Segwit was this big hurdle, this big challenge that we had to get over, and now we got it.
Well, I want to, one thing I forgot to ask Samson, I'm going to follow up with him shortly with this question I'm about to ask you is this the final nail in the coffin for these big blockers and some of the bad actors that are in the space? Do you think this is going to, once we get to August 8th and August 9th, is it going to overshadow some of the fear and FUD that's being thrown out there by certain players? What do you think about that, Ansel?
Well, I think over the last 2 years, Bitcoin as a community, Bitcoin as a network has become much more resilient to these social attacks, social engineering, the FUD that's been going around. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the big blockers, the big names, the ones that give the new efforts clout, like Andreessen or Ver, Jihan Wu, or whoever, they've kind of lost a little bit of their clout in the space. So the next big FUD is going to take a while to build up. We have to get a new face out there that's ready to push this, because people aren't going to listen to the same people over and over again. Okay,
I like that line of thought. In November, there's going to be the Segwit 2X. Are people just going to forget about the the bigger blocks, or are they going to try something in November?
Is that for me?
Yeah, that's for you. Yeah.
It's going to be very similar to what we just lived through. They're going to do the same FUD again, but like I said, we're more immune to it as a community. So I don't see it happening. Plus, we're going to see over the next couple months a lot of the narrative of, if you want big blocks, go to Bcash. So that's going to be out there. So yeah, I think it's going to be about like we just lived through.
If Bcash survives. So do you have a price, any price thoughts? Samson threw a big price out there. What do you don't have to throw out a price or anything.
I just want to get over the next couple weeks. I think we can be all-time highs, maybe 3,500 in the next few weeks, and then we'll go from there. Once Segwit activates, who knows? I mean, it's going to be a whole new network then.
Yeah. So long-term thinkers, for short-term thinkers, don't do anything foolish. You only have to wait till the end of the month to see what's going on here. Everything is going to be different by the end of this month with Segwit out there. So, Lorien, we just said a lot of stuff. Tell me what you want to expand upon there with Segwit in the current situation.
Sure. So it was a great explanation of Segwit. I'm not going to talk about the dates and all that sort of thing, but I want to go to Ansel's point about resilience. When Ethereum went through its drama and split, and everyone thought that was the end of that, and after all these months, we've been seeing how things have just been lingering on, and the world didn't end, and somehow these communities and speculators and developers and whoever's invested in all these different technologies, things just seem to go on. And for so long, we've been waiting for Segwit or at least some sort of scaling upgrade on Bitcoin. And we've been through this, not just this roller coaster in price, but this roller coaster in emotions. And I think it's not so much resilience anymore, but maybe emotional. We're emotionally drained. We've become numb. And at the end of it all, when we finally are getting Segwit to be locked in, and we can finally see that there's this road to a compromise of 2x. Suddenly Bitcoin Cash comes out of nowhere and gives us a curveball and lands us in the spot now where Segwit now it's almost been completely ruined. I mean, not ruined in terms of the fact that it's going through, but just the topic now is no longer about finally implementing Segwit and finally getting on with our lives. But now suddenly we have this whole new other thing to think about. In fact, our worst fears have come true. And, I've been always an outspoken Bitcoin maximalist. And now when I say to people that I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, that actually sounds weird now, because I actually do think Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. I know that Bcash, it would be best to try and make people less confused about what we've got going on here. If somebody comes to me and says, I want to buy Bitcoin, nowadays I have to say, well, which one? So, it's very confusing, but it also has just taken us over the edge. It's made our worst fears come true. And here we suddenly have two chains that are seeming both resilient. I mean, Bitcoin Cash is alive. And now it's completely flipped my whole thinking around things. It's almost gone back to that idea of, hang on, the whole point of this decentralized technology is that there is no single thing that just persists throughout. You can't please all the people all the time. And natural forces will mean that some people decide to fork off and make their own things. We've seen that with altcoins, but now we've seen that it can happen to Bitcoin too. And it's now not a case of ideology or anything like that. It's actually a case of market forces. Who is going to win because they are the better technology, not because they had consensus, they had the majority of people interested in that specific one. But now, what is just natural selection? Which is going to be the technology that wins? Is it this big block, or is it the segregated witness with all these second layer technologies? So now I'm very interested in both, actually. And I think Coinbase, although made huge mistakes in saying that they were not going to support Bitcoin Cash and setting themselves up for all this liability now that Bitcoin Cash has value and common law and all that sort of thing. I think Coinbase is unless they fold and they do allow people to pull their Bitcoin Cash out soon enough, they're going to stop people from having this crazy panic, dumping their Bitcoin Cash out of sight, and then 6 months, a year goes by, and suddenly Bitcoin Cash is still around, and suddenly it is $500, it's $600. Hang on, look at ETC, it's still around, and people are still trading it, and there's a community around it. So it's very important for us to be very careful here. We don't know how the market is going to play out, and I think that first of all, calling it Bcash might possibly, we don't know this, might possibly put us on the wrong side of history, as we're so against that one. But who knows what's going to win? It's anybody's guess. Sorry, wrong rant.
We got a different view from South Africa. Pound that like button if you're one of those people that say Adam only puts people who on the air who agree with him, because clearly Lorien and I don't agree exactly on this matter. Samson's got a lot to say, I am sure. And by the way, I want to thank 21 Million out there, a guy. He's got his own channel. He put me in touch with Samson. He interviewed Samson before I did. He is awesome. Check out 21 Million Club. Samson, you have some replies, I'm sure, to say to what Lorien just said.
Okay, so I want to go back to Ansel. So he was saying Segwit will unlock things like sidechains. We actually can do them now already. So Liquid is already in beta. It's just not commercial because we're not ready to operate it commercially yet. But you can actually do that without Segwit. And it's important to point out because Blockstream is often maligned as wanting Segwit so that we can do things like sidechains, or we call them strong federations as well. But going to the other points, I think Bcash and Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Cash name is confusing. I've seen a lot of people already, they seem to have thought they bought Bitcoin, but they actually bought Bitcoin Cash. There's articles talking about Bitcoin Cash's death, and people just read it as Bitcoin is dying. So there is a certain level of market confusion. So I see why there is a group pushing for the name Bcash, because it simplifies things. It makes it easier for the average user or buyer to really understand what it is exactly, because it's not exactly Bitcoin. It's a different rule set. And anytime you change the consensus rules, you're basically making a new coin or a new chain, just like Litecoin, right? Litecoin changes the hashing algo, changes block times and cap of coins. It's similar with what Bcash is trying to do. About the point about being on the wrong side of history, so you're saying that naming it Bcash is putting us on the wrong side of history? Should we? No, you're saying we should call it?
No, I'm saying being in a way not derogatory, but almost saying, look, this is the one that we have decided is not the true thing, whatever that is. What I think is that we are going to, yes, of course, the rules have changed, and I agree with you, that's true. So that technically means that if we were looking at the set of technology that made up Bitcoin Core as being Bitcoin, and then we have Bitcoin Cash, yes, of course, there's been a change. And so now we look at those two entities and we realize one is different. But have you ever heard of the analogy or the story of, the question, how long has that axe been in your family? Do you know that analogy? Where basically there's this axe in the family, and then after years of use, suddenly the axe head wears down, and then you replace the axe head, but now you still got the axe, because you still have the shaft. And then years go by, and then the shaft wears down, so you get a new shaft, and now you replace the shaft. So in effect, what you've done is you've replaced the entire axe, but you still have the axe. It's almost like your body. When you're a kid, you don't have any of the same cells that you did when you were little. You're completely different. I mean, you're still Samson, but you're not made of the same stuff. So here we have Bitcoin as being an ideological thing where we say, this is the one that we are going to rally around as our universal currency or our universal store of value. Its roots don't really matter, but it's the one that we've all chosen. And I think that, it might even be as simple as saying, wherever the majority of the hash power is, which means that's where the majority of the adoption is, that becomes the one. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too much about that.
So anyway, using the axe example, I think it's more like you have an axe and it's not worn down, it's perfect. And then let's say the axe is called Lorien, right? And then Adam comes in and brings a new axe and says, this axe is now Lorien. Well, I think that's more, it's more true to what we're seeing right now. So it's not like they're calling it L Cash, they're calling it Lorien. And that is kind of confusing, like it's now Lorien Cash. And it's more about keeping its identity separate. I don't think it's derogatory, really. It's just clarity more than anything else.
No, you're right. Actually, it's wrong for me to say that it's derogatory. I think maybe just the tone of people who are very committed to core. I've seen just so much. It's kind of like animosity. It's Bcash and all that sort of things coming along now. So Bitcoin Crash. So, but anyway, yes, I agree with you. It's difficult. In this space, it's hard to say everything, how it's all going to pan out, and it just looks like this world is undecided. And we don't know anything. So again, I think the point is going back to Coinbase saying, listen, at first, we're not going to support Bitcoin Cash because that's not what we believe in. But yet it's turning out to be this economically viable thing that suddenly people have ownership over, and it represents wealth and becomes a liability, to Coinbase to now have, not allowed their customers to now, have that derivative or that product from that product, common law product. Anyway,
Coinbase they made an announcement yesterday. I mean, they say they're going to have the Bcash by the first of the year. I mean, yes. They've altered their position. So you might not get it right now, but apparently by the first of the year, if things are still cool with it, if it still works, they're gonna give it out. So or to the people who had the Bitcoin there before the split. I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry for interrupting.
Well, the interesting thing, Lorien, you said was that wherever the hashing power is behind, whichever chain is behind it, that's the real coin. But I don't think that's an accurate measurement because hash rate is free to move, and it's actually really clear in Ethereum actually and Zcash. So Ethereum and Zcash miners were switching back and forth all the time. Whenever they wanted to, or actually, let's just say Ethereum. So they're ETC and ETH. Miners will go back and forth at any time. They're very mercenary. They're just looking to maximize their profits. So as long as something is more profitable, it'll draw miners over until there's equilibrium. And in the case of Coinbase, I think it's actually smart that they're giving it time because let's say all the miners left Bcash right now or Bitcoin Cash, then it would just stop existing. We're already seeing problems with block generation. So it's really uncertain if it will survive right now. It's being propped up because the miners are mining it unprofitably. It's 2 times more profitable to mine Bitcoin right now, at least.
But why do you think they're doing that? For what possible reason would they want to do that? To just waste money? What drives them?
Well, I think it's part of it is political. It's a statement. The faction that is pushing bigger blocks and Bitcoin Unlimited and XT and what other ones are there? Classic. Then they all want bigger blocks, and this is kind of their deliverance, right? So part of it is political. Part of it is face saving. So some miners have said, we must have bigger blocks. We must hard fork, and that's also why they're marketing it as a hard fork. So if you see all the messaging, it says Bitcoin is hard forking, but it's not really a hard fork. It's when you say hard fork and soft fork, that's more of a qualifier between the kind of network upgrade that should result in one chain. Whereas Bitcoin Cash, the intention from day one was to clone it and give it its own life and marketing. Also, why are they mining something unprofitable? Because it's like an investment. They can put in a few $1 million of mining hardware behind it, and it's not committed. They can move it out at any time. But by sustaining the chain, it's giving it life and it's giving it value. So you see news outlets, they're reporting, Bitcoin Cash has a market cap of billions of dollars, right? That attracts people. It brings in speculators. And, if you have a lot of Bcash before the split, then you can sell it and make some money and recoup your losses. So there are other ways to make money other than just mining it.
Let's get Ansel in here real quick with his thoughts about what's going on, because I know you've got something to add to this back and forth that's been going on, and tell us where you see Bcash going in the next few days to weeks, Ansel.
Well, to answer the question, Lorien's question about why would they mine it, well, there also is that aspect of slowing down the difficulty readjustment. And so hostile miners will go and mine it so that the difficulty will not readjust too quickly. And you can keep basically 2-hour blocks for a very long time until you get to the first true difficulty readjustment. So there is that aspect of it. It could be hostile miners. Look, there was a Coinbase transaction that said, fuck Bitcoin Cash or something like that. So there are hostile miners out there, and that is definitely happening. I think, Lorien, you are. I'm glad to hear that you're a big Bitcoin maximalist, but I think you're underestimating how difficult it is to actually launch a real chain now that Bitcoin exists. Mm. This is an adversarial system, and so people are going to be tearing apart your code, all that stuff. We see that. Ethereum has gotten much higher market cap, much bigger, but that is, I think, in part at the leisure of the hackers, right? Anytime they want to go in, we saw this with Parity. Anytime they want to go in and steal $30 million, they can do it. They could do it tomorrow if they wanted to, but if they did it every single day, the market cap would go and there would be their little honey pot that's gone. So they're going to spread out their hacks and do it that way. When you're comparing Bitcoin to Bcash, it is more of the one, it's the future value too, but it's a store of value. And there is nothing right now to store value in Bcash, I don't think. All of the future value, all the current value is in Bitcoin, and I don't see that changing. There's no way for it to change. I think game theoretically, there's no way for it to change.
Wow. All right. So with all that being said, Ansel, where do you see this Bcash thing progressing now in terms of people? Are people going to buy it, or is there going to be a major dump this week?
I think the safe bet is just to say it's going to look like every other altcoin chart before this year. So it's going to spike up and just slowly grind down to the bottom. And 2 years from now, it's probably going to be 1,000 Satoshis or something. So you don't have very high hopes for it. You're not optimistic like Lorien. Lorien seems to be a big optimist here. It's good to think that way. I mean, I have nothing against it that coin if people just call it Bcash. I think using Bitcoin is a really tricky thing because it is not a real. It's not what it says it is. So sorry, Lorien. I mean, Ansel continues.
I think the confusing thing is just that people now have it. It's not like an altcoin that comes along that you now have to bring value into it. Suddenly everyone has value on another chain, and it feels you almost want to protect that. You want to now in a way get the value of that going up. I guess that's the trick, that the bait and switch.
Yeah, well, I see this.
It's not free.
Yeah. So Ansel, sorry, I interrupted you before you were going to say something.
That's not free money. Everyone says it's free money. No, people are going to find out where your real Bitcoin stash is. If you spent years trying to be anonymous, they're going to be able to trace it back right to you. So you're going to lose your anonymity that you've probably spent a lot of effort to keep intact. There's also all sorts of different things, like maybe hit BTC goes down and lose your coins, or there's risk. It's not free money, and there is no free money. It probably has taken some away from the Bitcoin market cap, even though Bitcoin has gone up. But if there wasn't this hard fork, we probably would have been at all-time highs right now. So yeah, there's no such thing as free money. I haven't changed any of mine in because of those exact reasons.
Pound that like button, people. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, there's also a danger too. So for a lot of people to cash out their Bcash, they've got to install a lot of these new wallets that are floating around, and you don't really know who's writing that software. So I think there's Electron Cash that's a clone of Electrum. They're kind of stealing their brand there, but I don't think a lot of that code has been audited, and I think a lot of these are buggy. Even Bitcoin ABC, the stuff that the implementation that's powering Bcash is buggy. So if you read Trezor's website, they're saying there are a lot of issues with how they've structured the code and written the code for it. So you're kind of trusting that they're not going to steal your private keys when you import them into these clients. And because everything was so rushed, I don't think there's been a good security audit or investigation these implementations are.
Right.
It's just a matter of time for Eric Voorhees to put Bitcoin Cash into Shapeshift, because he's a trusted brand. Do you think that's imminent?
I mean, that is a great question, because some people are taking their time wanting to be involved in it. They might talk a big game that, we want options, but people don't want to be liable if they allow people to sell it on their exchange and everything messes up. They don't want to be liable for that thing. So I personally think it will be on Shapeshift eventually. I see that this coin, people are jumping into this thing way too fast, because I have learned in the last week, there are so many, you don't want to risk your Bitcoin because of this, out of the greed or the desire to get this coin. So I see a lot of people cashing out this week, but then I see kind of a lull for a while as people get used to it, as it gets safer, and the more responsible businesses that want to be involved in some way will slowly jump in. That's an opinion of mine. And then there might be an opportunity to sell again, because I don't know the price right now. I don't know what exactly is going on. I know it went below 0.1 BTC. Samson, what do you see for the price for this Bcash thing? Where do you see it going these next few weeks? And in terms of it maybe being on Shapeshift, or maybe other exchanges adding it and stuff?
Well, I think it'll probably make its way to Shapeshift. The question about Shapeshift is, if you're concerned about privacy, I think they're doing some reporting right now. There's been some news about that, and what Ansel was saying, if you're moving a lot of your coins, it can be traced back to you, right? It can be traced back to you on Bitcoin too. So there is a risk on that side as well, and I think a lot of people don't consider it. Sorry, the question was.
Well, and so what do you think about the price? Where do you see this? Do you see major dumping this week? And do you?
Yeah,
and
people can't dump it fast enough.
Yeah. So what do you see with the price in the coming days, in the coming weeks? Will there be a rebound in November when there's new FUD out there? Because there is going to be some new FUD from the Segwit 2x people.
I think Bcash has taken a lot of steam out of the Segwit 2x group, and it actually is funny because we kind of see three camps very clearly now. There's the Bcash group, which are kind of pumping and dumping. And I don't know if you read this, there's this website named calvinier.com. They're the ones that have been fudding Segwit, and they're the first to say, we're a casino site and we're going to support Bcash. So there is this pump and dump group over on this side that is kind of saying, Segwit sucks and Bcash is great and everything. And then you have the middle. I guess you can call them Bitcoin maximalists, people that are interested in math and science and Bitcoin itself, Bitcoin proper. And then on this side, you have the Segwit 2X group, and they're the corporate guys that push through that New York agreement, and they don't like Bcash because it kind of takes away their momentum. But I think there's a massive pressure to sell off Bcash, and people can actually get their coins on exchanges. Some exchanges want 20 confirmations, and at 1 hour block times, with sometimes there being no blocks for 7 hours or 13 hours, it's really hard to sell. And if you look at exchanges like BTC, there's like 10 times more coins being sold than bought. So once things are moving along, the market is more liquid, I think the price is going to drop very rapidly. And I'd be surprised if it was over $100 in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so you see no recovery, because I mean there are a lot of irrational players out in our space. We've seen with ICOs and everything that just think that there's a new trend. I want to jump into this thing. You see, I agree with you that logically, this price has to drop. There's a waiting line right now to sell because it's taking 20 hours basically. But a lot of people are gonna shoot their load, get rid of their stuff. But there will be a few people that they're still holding, and then there's gonna be hype pieces. So I foresee that I think it can be hyped up again. I don't think there's much legitimacy behind the coin, but I've seen what's happened with these ICOs. I've seen what's happened with these other pump and dumps. There's a lot of irrational, non-logical players, illogical players in this space.
There's no logic in cryptocurrency. So it can be pumped. It can go up, to a couple $100. It can sustain that as long as people pumping it are pumping it. And you just see people coming out of the woodwork and saying Bcash is better than Bitcoin. Not you, Lorien, but other people. But you kind of wonder like why. And I was arguing with a guy on Twitter. He was saying Bcash is going to compete with Litecoin, and he was saying Bcash is peer-to-peer, and Bitcoin and Litecoin are not. And I'm like, well, why? It's the same thing. And in fact, Litecoin has more throughput than Bcash, and has more hashing power too. So there is a clear movement to pump it and get rich quickly. And it can sustain because there is no rational thinking in the cryptocurrency space. Like things that are worth nothing are suddenly worth something. I was talking with Adam Beck, and you could think of Bcash as a social experiment to see if you give people something that is not worth anything, will they value it? And I think the answer is yes. And it opens the door for more of these clone coins to come on the market because people ascribe value to it because it's theirs. And it's a really clever way. You can almost say Bcash is like a backdoor stock market listing in a way that it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't exist, but then it can kind of make its way through and get listed. By any definition, it's an altcoin. And exchanges should not even bother. Like if I launched a coin right now, I don't think exchanges would list it. But because of that effect where people have been gifted something that kind of looks like it has value, it kind of takes on a life of its own and has that value.
But you see, that's the tricky thing because, it came from Bitcoin. So everybody who had Bitcoin on those exchanges now have a new asset. Now, whether or not it is valuable, that's another question. But the fact is that it does have value right now suddenly means that those exchanges must, they're compelled to do it. If it had just been another altcoin saying, look, we're called Bitcoin Cash, we've got this, of course they would never have done it. But the fact that it came out of the coins that were on the exchanges that were held by those people, that suddenly made it so difficult for them that they were forced to now allow people to at least to draw it out. So it's a very tricky situation. This very interesting.
Yeah,
well, I think we'll see more of that actually too.
That was an incredible point Samson made about this is a social experiment. I mean, Samson, that was just brilliant on your part and Adam Beck's part. Pound that like button if you like what Samson said. Sorry to interrupt you, Samson. Sorry. You were about to say something, Lorien. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll see more of this because it's kind of setting a precedent that if you do this, if you clone the coin clone the code base and clone the blockchain, you know, people will clamor for it. So I would expect there will be more of these clones to hit the market, and it is a clever marketing gimmick.
Who was behind this? I mean, they don't have infinite number of Jihan Wu's or Roger Ver's to pump something in 3 weeks, right? So there's always a limit to this. Plus, remember Lucky 7 and what was that? Cryptsy or Lucky 7 and one of the altcoin exchanges where they pushed out an update that had malware in it or that went in there and took down their exchange. So all of these things, I mean, you can't just infinitely fork a coin. So I think that not only does the number of people, it relies on a small number of people, but it also relies on the ignorance of the masses that they don't understand that this could have bugs in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting point that not everyone can do it, but you actually don't need that much money to do it. All you need is a little bit of hash rate, and all you need is a friendly exchange to collude with you and do a futures market, and you can prop it up because the moment it kind of exists, and the coin market cap sites are so dumb, they just multiply coins with price. They don't take into account liquidity, market depth, or even utility or anything else. It just exists. And like you said, people don't really know better. So they kind of think, okay, that's real. And then the mainstream media reports and says, the market cap is so big. That makes it happen, right? So you don't need that much to create one of these coins. That's why I think we're going to see more of these clones come onto market. I think you're right that there's not an infinite number of Rogers and Jihans that can prop these things up, but it's kind of a feature of cryptocurrencies. If you're in any currency early and you have amassed a large chunk of it and it actually gains value over time, it can it'll give you enough money to kind of be able to support a clone of it later on, right? So if you're Roger and you came in early, you won the lottery ticket, you have a bunch of these coins, well, now the market cap of Bitcoin is 40 billion. Now you have some money to play around with and sustain one of these chains. So let's say your initial Bitcoin investment is worth 50 million or 100 million. Well, propping it up with $2 million or $3 million of hashing power is piddly.
So is Roger the new Dan Lammer?
I don't know. Maybe.
All right. I want to wrap up the Bcash thing. Do any of you have anything to add to the Bcash discussion before we move on to Lorien telling us what is going on in Africa, in South Africa, with this new TV show and with cryptocurrency? Anything to add to the Bcash? Anyone?
I have a question, and Adam, you're a marketing guy. So now that we got this thing that everyone is that these guys are calling Bitcoin Cash, how is it possible that anybody can create anything that says Bitcoin, in the name? I mean, what rights does Bitcoin as a thing say that you can't use the Bitcoin brand because that's a trademark or something? How is it possible to stop somebody calling a coin Bitcoin something?
It's impossible. There's already a Bitcoin dark. What happens is people start legitimizing it by writing articles about it and colluding with exchanges about. That's what you have to do to get. So there's nothing stopping. Anyone could create a piddly little altcoin called, Bitcoin Atom, but everyone would ignore it. It would just be totally forgotten. Maybe I'd be hyping it here, but that would just be me. But so it can't be stopped. But if I talk to some writers, hey, you got to write about this. You'll get some Bitcoin Atom once you hype it up. You got and especially with the exchanges, do the futures market. Yeah, then it's got a real chance of success. But the main question, no one can stop people. No one owns the name Bitcoin. And maybe someone's going to try. Maybe Craig Wright will try to buy the name Bitcoin or something. I mean, say he owns it or some ludicrous thing like that. Sorry for you guys have your say on that. Sorry, I said too much.
Yeah, I would like to answer that. There are so many pyramid schemes in the world. I mean, I live in a small town here in the Midwest, and there's probably thousands of people doing pyramid schemes. Crypto is just such a small community that we know all of them. We're never going to stop this from happening. There's they're going to keep growing in number. The problem is that they're not going to be able to socially attack Bitcoin. So yeah, I think we'll see more of it, but they won't be big. They'll just take advantage of suckers. That's all you can say.
Samson, what are your thoughts on future? How many future coins are going to try to use the Bitcoin name? And do you think, is there a way they can be stopped? I don't think there's a way for people to stop using the name if they want to.
I think they'll use it until they can't use it. And I think it'll be hard for another coin after Bitcoin Cash to do that, because there will be media fatigue. For the media, it's kind of a novelty right now that, oh, Bitcoin split. It's not really a split. It's more of a duplicate. It's a clone. But you know, it's interesting for them that something can happen like this, because you just never see you'd never see anything like this happen in financial markets, right? The closest analogy is a stock split, but then it's all regulated, right? So I think if Bitcoin Atom did come along, I don't think it would work. Even with a little bit of hash rate propping it up, because it's like that story is done already. I think it has a lot to do with the scaling debate. So if you think that scaling debate was long and drawn out, it did give a lot of attention to that group trying to make bigger blocks, and this is kind of their finale.
Yeah, I hope you hope that the FUDsters are gonna give up, but there'll always be something coming up. So is the life in Bitcoin. There's always going to be issues, and there's always going to be someone trying to stir the pot. And then, to each their own, whatever. All right. Anything else about Bcash before we move on?
I got one more thing, Adam.
Okay.
Decentralization is not nice to have, right? You can't go from centralization and try to uncentralize to decentralize a coin. Once it's centralized, it's done. So that puts a limit on a lot of these coins too, because they have to be centralized to launch. It's the bootstrapping problem of a blockchain. You have to be centralized to bootstrap it. Bitcoin is the only one that will be original in that respect.
Excellent point about central. Excellent point. Samson and Lorien, anything to add there to that? All right, let's move on. Lorien, since this is an international show, people are very curious about what's up. There's a show on cable TV now in South Africa, mainstream news talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency every week, and you were just on it. Tell us about this is it CNBC Africa? I don't even know. Tell us what's going on with that and what's going on with Bitcoin in South Africa and cryptocurrency in general. And are people talking about the Segwit or the split or anything down there?
Well, that's just an indication of how big Bitcoin awareness is growing in South Africa. South Africa is an amazing country. It's you've been here. It's the most European of every African country, but yet it still shares the DNA and neighbors of Africa. And we have Zimbabwe right on our doorstep, and we can see how bad it can be, but yet we're protected from that somewhat. So we've got great stand. Everything's fantastic here. If you are a person who needs the skills, there's a lot of educated people here, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of technology, and a lot of very smart, very aware people. And so cryptocurrency is it's very socially acceptable. In fact, it's less and less nowadays about all the bad things that can happen with cryptocurrency, but now it's all about the good things. And of course, Bitcoin is the brand name that's the biggest brand name, and also because of the services that are here, they focus on that. The corporates are all focusing on Ethereum, and then there's obviously the sort of few people who like and know about Litecoin and all that sort of thing. But so my business is all about trying to get Bitcoin into the hands of people here because they want it. And the exchanges, because we have exchanges here, we've got good exchanges. They're just too complicated for most people. You got to EFT money, and it takes days, and then you got to understand how the exchange works. So we're trying to just make vouchers and all those sorts of things that get Bitcoin into the hands of people because they want it. But and now you're going to see why I have that feeling. When it comes to solving problems with Bitcoin, I'm almost willing to look at anything that could potentially solve the problems that I'm finding down here in Africa, and for a long time, the fee I mean, for the last year, 2 years, the fees have just been completely outside of the reach of anybody. Anybody can manage it. The average person in the street cannot pay $1 on a transaction fee, and yet even them buying it, they're going to want to hold on to it to speculate a little bit, but then they are going to want to give that to somebody else. They're going to want to send it to a relative, and even if it's a small amount of money, it's a huge roadblock. It's a stumbling block to getting them into Bitcoin more freely. You can create all these products which they want, but it's just too much. So when you're down here, all you want is to find a solution to this problem. And on-chain scaling, it feels like it's the biggest thing that can happen right now that will solve that problem. And suddenly you're going to start seeing massive growth on this continent. So it's very exciting, and you can see now by CNBC now being totally happy to put a TV show on, which is all about crypto trading. It's not about blockchain tech. It's not about all the things we discussed. It's just literally, here's a ticker symbol. Look how it's been doing over the last 6 months. Oh, and by the way, these guys are they've got a good white paper, or they've got a product that's sort of in there, but it's just about tickers, and it's almost like this whole new world of tech stock trading. And this show just shows you how people are starting to embrace it. So it's a very exciting time. If you want to, if you want to be in a place where you can see the reality of Bitcoin taking over the world, come to Africa, and you'll be delighted.
Yeah, just a reminder to everyone to pound that like button if you like when I bring up how Lorien and I were together in South Africa. We were together in Zimbabwe. We were together in Mozambique, meeting real Bitcoin people. Or cryptocurrency people, and it was just quite a bonding time for us. I mean, to be out there in the nitty gritty, in the getting down and dirty with the people, it has changed my life, and it's truly something to see, because you hear a lot of people talking about the potential of Bitcoin in Africa. Well, be on the ground there, and you will be able to talk about it on an expert level when you come back. Now, I did see some of that CNBC show a little. I mean, they're talking about ICOs and stuff a little bit. Is that going to lead anybody down a dangerous path, or I mean, is the show going to get more people, get more financial people into Bitcoin, but will it hurt some people too? What's your opinion on that, Lorien?
Well, yes, I think everything you said. But first of all, and as Samson was saying, markets sometimes just stay irrational. They don't have any real substance to them, but yet people believe in it, and they want it to continue. So they just persist, and somehow value flows in and out, and it seems sustainable. ICOs, people are certainly buying ICOs. People are trying to raise money through ICOs right now. I know a few projects, actually quite interesting ones, to be honest. I've been quite skeptical about ICOs, but I'm starting to see quite interesting applications for an ICO. There's this one company that's doing rental properties, and they issue tokens which where you can earn dividends and things, and another bunch who are trying to bring like the music industry wants to use blockchain to allow more value to flow into the artists. There's this company, these guys are trying to develop sports stars, because they also get milked by the agents or the management or the whatever. And so they're trying to launch an ICO. So it's actually creating a lot of interesting, application down here. And also, in South Africa, it's still a developing country. So there's a lot of things that don't exist that exist in places like the US, that ICOs can maybe just fill the gap instead of the sort of legacy tech that will come along in decades to come. So it's very interesting.
Very, very interesting indeed. I want to ask the other guest, since it's just a great opportunity to have Lorien on this show to give this he is the best, biggest, most famous Bitcoin cryptocurrency guy in all of South Africa. Do you two have any questions for him or anything like that? Anything you'd like to add to this? Any curiosities?
I have a comment. So, Lorien, you're saying that on-chain scaling would help because it would reduce the fees, right? I think off-chain scaling would help everyone in South Africa or Africa the most, because there's how many millions of people there in Africa?
In the whole of Africa, probably just over a billion.
A billion. So yeah, like on-chain scaling will not get. So assume everyone wants to do one transaction a day.
Sure.
that's going to need at least gigabyte-sized blocks, and that's not going to work. You just have to do the math and multiply out transactions, how big a transaction is, and how big the blocks have to be based on how many blocks there can be in a day. But I think Lightning will actually help everyone because you can have near zero fees. People will be able to receive Bitcoins through Lightning, and they only need to settle out when they want to settle out. They can keep their Bitcoins in Lightning.
Sure. No, I agree with you. That is definitely the long-term vision here. But if we were to try and fix a little problem that has big consequences, just taking those blocks up to 8 megs. If you just to do that, just the simplest case, and it seems like it is possible to do quite quickly. Then maybe we could have that time to now start developing all these like Lightning and testing it and making sure it works great. But just for now, we're anxious. We want to get things going, and it would be nice if we could make maybe a bigger compromise and say, all right, 2x. Hopefully by the end of November. Every month that goes by, it feels like and also there's other issues around here. It's almost like a race against time, given global macroeconomic problems that seem to be coming to a head now. It's almost like we should try and do as much as we can in the short term to just give us allow us to begin right now, and then we can have that.
I agree with you in principle.
Yes,
but in actuality, if you go and make a Bitcoin transaction right now, it's not going to cost $1. It's going to be a couple cents, because the mempool is only 35 megabytes. So if you go to one of the websites tracking the mempool usage, it's like as it's being spammed, and now it's back down here. So it's actually really cheap to do a transaction right now. And
sure,
you can do 8 megabyte blocks, but there is actually going to be a cost, because to process 8 megabyte blocks, you're going to need more robust hardware. So those same people they're going to be hesitant to make transactions because they're expensive, will also be hesitant to run a full node and validate their own transactions. So it's kind of like you have to find this right equilibrium between the cost to run a node so that you can self-validate and the price of transactions. Right now, I think it's okay, and urgency right now, unless in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the mempool will get spammed again and the price goes up per transaction. But I don't really see that happening. And once Segwit is live, it will be much more expensive to spam the network. The cost to create the UTXO will be more similar to the cost to spend it. So it's not going to be as easy for people to do that. And plus, Segwit will give us larger blocks as well, which will alleviate the fee pressure.
I think it's simpler than that. If you want the solution, build it. Why are you putting pressure on some protocol devs halfway around the world? Build your own solution if it's so easy. Look at it going from 1 megabyte to 8 megabytes with this Bcash. It's centralized it. What do you need a centralized blockchain for? Just use a database. It's not that hard. And having these ICOs on a CNBC show, oh my God, that's so scary to me. These people are going to lose all their money. They're going to give Bitcoin a bad name. They're going to bring the regulators down on these people.
We're going to link to that. I'm going to link to that show too. People have got to see. I mean, this is quite amazing that this is going on in Africa. It will be linked to below. Sorry, continuing, Ansel. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I could rant about this all the time. Most people aren't going to use Bitcoin. Africa might be ripe for Bitcoin derivatives like Lightning or sidechains, but they're not ripe for Bitcoin. Bitcoin cannot solve your problems. You have to build your own solutions. If it's not ready for you, build it. And don't try to FUD our coin away. Don't try to do take over our community and cause rifts in our community, like Roger Ver caused all these rifts in the community, and now people hate each other. Why? Because he had to tell us what to do. Start your own coin if you're so smart. Start your own blockchain. I can't believe that people would want to like pump this up. It's like, look at all of these speculators out there. Of course, these coins will have a small market cap because there's enough pumpers out there that can get enough dumb money in to keep it pumped up to a couple $100 million. It's never going to be a continent-changing blockchain, okay? It's never going to be.
I will say this: Lorien is making a product, and Lorien, you should talk about your product. But reply, yes.
Well, first of all, you must understand that I agree with everything that you guys are saying. Whenever I'm faced with a situation, I always try and look at both sides and see, look for the silver lining, and when we see something like this, of course, like I said to you before, this was certainly my worst nightmare, having a time where we would look at something like Bitcoin splitting. So it's not a desirable thing at all. It has certainly created a lot of confusion now, and again,
happened. The Bitcoin price is at 28.50 right now.
Sure.
It's gone up since the fork. This is not the worst nightmare. All the hard forker and the big blocker, the mega blockers, the on-chain scaling people now have their own chain. That's a dream come true. If you ask me, it's not anybody's worst nightmare.
Sure, you're right. Exactly. No, you're actually entirely correct, and that's why now that we're on the other side of it, it's not so bad. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, now we've got these two different things that, who knows? Now we can watch them. It looks like it didn't end Bitcoin. We still have Bitcoin strong. All this, and hopefully carries on and doesn't make too much more confusion in the future. But it's nice to have it, because now we can maybe see what is going to happen. Instead of us fearing this whole thing, we're now in that position where, okay, it's happened. Now let's see how the market plays out. Let's see the dynamics. So it's not that I'm trying to justify this. I'm not trying to say, look, I'm glad this happened. Not at all, except for the fact I am glad it happened, because now that it's happened, now we don't have to fear it anymore, and we can now see what goes on. Now, this is the whole thing about being the early adopter, is we are all living this out in our lives, seeing how all these things turn out. So it's quite exciting, actually.
I would like to jump in one more time. Sorry, Samson and Adam, to keep dominating this the time here, but holders weren't scared. If you listen to my podcast from February, I said this user-activated soft fork is going to go through. It's going to be a non-event the whole time going through. Holders aren't scared. So what if they lose 50% today? They're going to be up 500% next year. So holders weren't scared. The only people that were scared were these speculators, and that makes me very suspicious of people when they're really worried about, like, my product needs to pump the price. This is, I'm scared about this price. You don't understand Bitcoin. Bitcoin is robust. It's going to last. Look at this hard fork. Nothing happened. Nothing. Don't be scared. It's nothing to be scared of. Just buy and hold Bitcoin, and in 10 years, you won't even need to start a business. You'll be investing in businesses like whatever you're trying to start up, and you're going to be doing charity work in Africa with Bitcoin derivatives. So that's my rant. Sorry, guys.
So nothing happened because the Bcash guys put in strong replay protection. Potentially could have been pretty disruptive if they didn't do that, where transactions were going back and forth between both chains and causing a lot of market confusion. But they did put it in, so it's almost like it's a totally separate currency. And I think that's why it didn't disrupt the market too much.
I thought it was at the leisure of the miners. I thought it was like kind of a soft replay protection.
They've changed it a few times throughout the implementation, but right now it's reliable replay protection. Okay,
very, very good to know. Lorien, I want you to mention your what the specific thing you're up, because you mentioned mention Ban-Ki-moon and whatever you want to mention. Give yourself because people are curious about what you're doing.
Well, as I said, trying to get Bitcoin into the hands of unsophisticated people who don't even have bank accounts, especially people who come from across the border, from Zimbabwe, trying to come here and they get these informal jobs. They don't have any identification. It's very hard for them to get it. And also, once they have it, we can easily send it to their relatives and turn it into mobile money on the other side, much like BitPesa does. So that's why we so keen to make sure that first of all that people get to the products with they can go to the retail checkout and they can buy it with cash, and that's going to really, it makes it a lot easier for people to get hold of it. And that's my mission. My stated goal is to bring Bitcoin to Africa and do whatever it takes to get people off their local fiat currencies and onto sound money. So that's basically what I'm focused on.
All right, and I will add, we've got some links down there to all these guys' Twitters. They're going to send me more links they want me to add. So come back. If you're watching this live, not all the links are up there yet. There are going to be all sorts of informative links about how to reach these guys and what they're doing. Ansel, is there anything you'd like to add that, Aaron? And is there anything we forgot to mention during this show? Anything, what you're doing, you want to plug anything, things, just anything? The floor is yours, Ansel.
No, sorry I ranted there. Lorien, I'm sure you're a great guy, and we're kind of ideologically aligned. I think we just have a different understanding of what's going on with Bitcoin, and I'm really tired of all of this stuff. I think we can avoid a lot of this if people that are in kind of like, look, Adam, how many subscribers do you have? People that are in the limelight a little bit need to talk tough and tell people how it is, and not let these blockchainers go and pump all these ICOs and Ethereum and all this stuff. We have a well, we don't have a responsibility, but that is nice for us to be able to do that. That's all I have. But I did want to just say, listen to my podcast, bitcoinandmarkets.com.
Yeah, the frustration that's coming from Ansel, I know exactly what he means here. There's nothing personal against Lorien or anything like that. No. But we going into this, the build up to this was that all people were just making this thing seem really scary and playing into the hands of the bad actors and others who were behind this Bcash thing. So there was an air of legitimacy that some really smart people in our space were giving it, and they didn't mean to do it. They didn't really mean to do it. They were, a lot of people, we can't help these guys. You don't have to hate on them or anything like that, but sometimes you got to think like, am I being used here? Am I giving them too much credit? And that's where I'm, when Lorien was talking about, it was going to be scary. It's going to be the end of the world. Beforehand, I was saying the same thing, that no, it wasn't going to be those things at all. I didn't want people to overreact, because overreaction was going to get us into a bad situation. And the more we talked about it, the more likely it is. If we never talked about it, if we ignored all these people, then it wouldn't be listed on exchanges. All it is another altcoin, really. That is really all it is. But it's an altcoin that people have given a lot of attention to for various reasons. So there's my little bit of a rant there too. And again, we've had shows about this before, and Ansel was actually on that show where he addressed this specific thing. And that's why I will never call it by that other name, because it's not Bitcoin. It is an altcoin. It is Bcash, is a fine name that sounds like Dash. Actually, that Ansel pointed that out off the air. He said it sounds like Dash. But no, end of Meister explanation right there. Lorien, if you want to say anything about that, I'll give you the last word on that.
Okay, well, I'll start. I'll end with saying that I'm with you guys. I'm very excited about the Segwit and everything that is to follow. I guess I was being a bit of a devil's advocate. There are different issues down here, and it's nice to see that. Again, it's a free market, and it's going to be a whole thing about natural selection, perhaps. Who knows? But at the end of it all, I think we're all going to be better off. The world's going to be a better place because of all this.
I agree, and I think it's great that you brought your opinion here and devil's advocate, and you gave us a unique perspective, because in this bubble, in the North American centric bubble that we interact with, there's this. A lot of Bcash, it's Bcash. It's just, we're going to call it Bcash. But you're not here, and it's just, you're giving a very unique, and who knows how many people agree with you out there. We don't know. That's why I try to have international guests on here. Samson, you've got the final word here. you could talk as long as you want about anything that we forgot, anything you want to tie up, anything you want to promote. The floor is yours, Samson Mow. You are the new one to the show, so take it over, baby.
So, I'm hearing Ansel's rant, and I feel his frustration. I think a lot of people are frustrated about all the FUD to Bitcoin and the pumping of ICOs and other things. And I think it's just something we have to learn to live with in the space, because the incentives are to pump things that are cheap, right? So people pump penny stocks. They don't pump Google. Well, they might pump Google, but maybe not. But, it's just always going to be there. The incentives are to pump these things and make a profit, just like miners want to make a profit and exchanges want a stable currency so that they can offer it to customers. Like, everyone has their own incentives in the space. And I think what we're doing, what Adam, you're doing, and everyone else, is educating people and letting them understand how things work, right? So I think what Lorien is doing in Africa is really important. It's bringing sound, reliable money, or a store of value to people that will greatly benefit them in the long run. How we get there, how we evolve Bitcoin, it takes time. And I think not everyone will agree on how scaling should be done. But I think we all agree that Bitcoin is a good thing and that we should advocate it and bring it to the masses.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to tie up the show today, to end it. I thank my guest for this lively discussion of what has happened this week in Bitcoin, what is going to happen soon enough. We really covered some awesome, exciting, controversial topics. And again, this show is every Friday, This Week in Bitcoin. I post a new show every single day. We have interviews. We have all sorts of interesting productions here. So I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister. Pound that like button if you liked this video, or if you just like pounding the like button. I'm also the Disrupt Meister. Did I say that? Yeah. Anyway, so remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video, and do check out the notes section below. We're going to have all these guys' pertinent links put up there really soon. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Bye-bye. See you next week. See you guys. Thank you.
See ya.
Ooh.